Right, well, we're at the fantastic Lodge Farm today, and this is a new venue to me, and this particular lake, Top Pool, is somewhere I've never been before. Now, I've done a little bit of homework and tried to find out some information about it. I'm told it's very deep and it's got some really hard fighting carp in it that are really going to test the kit. So we're going to do a spotter method fishing today with the brand new medium size ICS flatbed method feeders and see how we get on. Right, today we're at the fantastic Lodge Farm and we're doing a spotter method feeder fishing. And I'm very lucky to be out with Zolt testing the new medium size flatbed method feeder from the ICS system. And I've got to say, I'm well impressed. It's just the perfect size for when the small's just not quite enough and the large is just a little bit too much. So they've listened to what anglers have wanted, and we've now got a medium feeder in the range. And in my view, I like that idea because I'm not a fan. I don't mind double skinning a small one to get more bait on, but when you're having a busy match or a busy session, it takes longer to bait your feeder up, whereas with a medium one you only have to bait it up once now. So yeah, really good. We've had 2 or 3 carp already, nice and steady. We're not fishing too far out, probably about 22 metres. I've not clipped up, we're just fishing in open water. The lake we're fishing on today is very deep and I've never fished it before, and the fish are renowned in here for fighting extremely hard. And I've got to say, of the fish that I've had so far, they certainly, when you get them to the net, know you've got them on. It's a little bit overcast and the sun's trying to break through, and I think the depth we're fishing in feels like it's 12, 13 foot deep. It's pretty deep out there at about 22 metres. And we're loose feeding 6mm pellets over the top. And I'm trying to feed like probably 15 to 20 pellets a couple of times every 5 minutes or so. If the sun breaks through properly, there's a strong chance that the fish will want to come up in the water. I'm hoping I can try to keep a few on the bottom. But the fish will do what they always do, and that is they'll swim where they want to swim. We've got a couple more lines. I've keep feeding and loose feeding the edge line and loose feeding a line at 5 metres, where basically, from what I can gather, this lake there's just a steep shelf that shelves away pretty steeply. So like I say, we're just fishing 22 metres at the moment, but a bit later on we'll certainly try the short line and certainly the edge, and based on how the fish are fighting so far, they're certainly putting a bend in this rod. So we'll just wind it in and I'll give you a glimpse of the medium size method. Put the wafter in the middle, pellets on top, in the mould. I like to give it a really good squeeze. If you get your pellets right, you never have a problem with it not coming out the mould. There we go. And then when it's out the mould, I personally like to give it a good squeeze. I'd rather it get to the bottom intact than have some pellets come off on the way down, especially on this lake today where it's really quite deep. Certainly deeper than your average commercial. Like I say, we're not fishing too far out. Let's feel the method down. Hold a tight line. There we go, it's hit the bottom. So I think that's about 12 foot of water or so. Now what I also like to do is, I personally think, and everybody has their own style, but I personally think it's really important to fish a slack line when you're method feeder fishing, no matter whether you're fishing a short chuck, a long chuck, in deep water or up against an island, or even on the 5 metre line or down the edges. I always fish a slack line. I'm a massive believer in it. You know, the line's in a straight line, so although there's no bend in the tip, there's no tension, it's in a straight line, so you do see bites. And I think it's really important. I'm a massive believer in that the fish know when there's a tight line going to your feeder. But trust me, if a fish picks it up, it'll pull it round. And quite often the bites that you get, because the tip is dead straight, you get a proper exaggerated bite, the proper rip the rod round. And when you're fishing it like that, you see a lot more indications and line bites and signs of fish, whereas when you've got a tight line, you don't see as much, so you can't learn as much about your peg and understand where the fish are in your peg. So it's really important. I'm loose feeding a few 6mm pellets over the top. We're not clipped up today. I was a little bit wary of clipping up, given I was warned how hard the fish fight. So far the bites have been positive pulls, but not absolute ripping the rod in. But they put up a good scrap, and when you get them under the rod end, they certainly try and either go under your pallet or swim down the edges and certainly try and do you. So we're fishing pretty stout gear. Got 8 pound sinking feeder mono on, an 019 hook length to a size 14 KKH hook. So pretty strong gear. At the moment I've got an 8mm yellow Bandam wafter on. It's not prolific, but it's been steady away. Like I say, I think the issue we'll have today is the depth of water. But we have had a few fish, so hopefully we'll continue to get a few. He's on. Right, so there we go, nice steady bite. Not vicious bite, but pulled the tip round properly. It's a fair sized carp, I'd guess it, without seeing it, probably £4 plus. I'm conscious that they fight hard on the way in, bringing them up from that depth of water, but when you get them under the rod end, they certainly steam off, and I was warned about this, and everything that they said to me so far has been correct. I'm a little bit wary about having the clutch too slack on this SD reel, because they could easily take some line and either swim under the platform or in the snags down the edge. So I'm a little bit old school and tend to play them backwind off the reel. I feel I can control them a little bit more. In open water I'd be more prepared to use the clutch, but that's lucky, the hooks come out in the landing net. So, beautiful carp, certainly hard fighting, probably about 4.5 pound. Let's see if we can get another. So, I've tied this KKH up with a barbed bayonet. I just find them a little bit more user friendly when it comes to putting a wafter on. So dead simple, just put the point close to the centre of the wafter and they go in pretty easily. There we go. So, like I say, I've got a 360-degree bead to allow maximum movement and flexibility. Round the bead, free running. There it is, the medium size, 30 gram. So just bait it up. So half filled the mould, push it down with your finger, put the wafter in, push him in, pellets on top, push it down, and then some loose ones. Fold the method into it, good squeeze. Always hold the wings of the method mould, push it down with your thumbs, upside down, gentle press, and out it pops. And then just clean it up round the edges, give it a good squeeze in the palm of your hand, and it's ready to go. So you want about a 5 foot drop from your feeder. I always just check the line slack, not fast round the reel. Gentle cast out, hit the clip, or in this case I'm just feathering it with my finger and stopping it. So it goes in with a nice plop. Always important for it to go in correctly. And given it's had a good squeeze, I'm confident it's sunk to the bottom intact. Rod in the rod rest, tighten up gently, and make sure that the line, or the tip I should say, is straight. And like I say, when you're fishing a lake where there's a lot of tow and shallow water, the tow will naturally pick your line up and pull the tip round a little bit. And in some ways it's a bit like fishing a river. You just have to pay a little bit of line out to reduce the tension on your tip. Some days when it's really towing, you can't get the tip dead straight, but you can pay a big bow out and have the line as slack as you can possibly get it, really. And you always see bites, especially within line, because if you imagine they suck the bait in, they swim off and they pull the line through the feeder. So the tip eventually always pulls round. That'll be on. Always happens when you're loose feeding and you take your eye off the rod. Oh, feels like it could be a skimmer, this. I have been told there's some big bream in this net. Well, there again. No, I think it's a carp. Got him to the rod end and he's certainly pulling. It's around 5 foot deep right off my rod end, and he's certainly bending this rod. And here's a better one. The water's a little bit clear, but we have had a lot of rain, like I say. What a beautiful fish. There we go. Oh, that was poor netting on my pot. You certainly do know you've got them on under the rod end. There we go. He's mine. Shuffle him in, chip pan him into the net. Bring it back nice and steady. Grab the spreader block. Beautiful. Just how I like them, nice and calm when they get to the net. So I tend to use a disgorger most of the time when it comes to taking the hook out. If the fish flips, it's usually a good way. There we go. Got my wafter back as well. That's a bonus. I don't have a problem using the same wafter on the hook again. And pop him in the net. It's a bit too big to lift, that one. So just pop him in the net nice and gently. There we go. Right, so a little bit about the tackle we're using today. One of the new Duracarp feeder rods in 10 foot, and I've got to say, for me with a rod, it's all about the action. This has a beautiful, nice through action, keeps bending, but it's got a bit of backbone and power behind it for when you get them under the rod end. Nice tip, blends perfectly into the rod. The reel's a new Centris 520 SD with a quick drag on it, which is absolutely beautiful. I've got to say, I've had the original Centris reels since they were first launched, and for me the most important thing about a reel, especially for feeder fishing and commercial feeder fishing, is its winding power. sometimes you pick a reel up in the shops and they wind lovely when they're not under any load, but as soon as you get a fish on, sometimes the reels are a bit hard to wind and they haven't got the power, the gearing. But these are absolutely beautiful, and for me the reel is probably more important than the rod when it comes to playing the fish and winding in and out constantly. And these Centris reels with this SD drag on them are absolutely beautiful. I also like the new folding reel handles on them as well, just the job. So like I said, we'll feed a few pellets, 2 lots, about 15 6mm each time, in the same spot. Less frequently with a view to trying to keep the fish on the bottom, but as the sun's breaking through now it might be a bit of a challenge today. But I'm also loose feeding a few pellets just off the rod end in about 5 6 foot of water, but it does shelve away quickly, and a few down the edge, hopefully for later on when we'll catch a few there. Coming back to the terminal tackle, so for me when it comes to method feeder fishing, you select what you're going to use, be it a Jura, an XR banjo or a flatbed method. I could have used the XR banjo today with the walls on it given the depth of water, but we wanted to try the new medium flatbed. But I'm confident if you load it in the way I said and give it a really good squeeze, it'll get to the bottom intact, no problem, providing it hits the water when you cast it with a nice plop. A firm squeeze, even in 12 foot of water, it'll certainly get to the bottom intact. So like I say, I've used the 360 bead. Everything about my terminal tackle, the hook is strong enough not to bend, even with how hard these fish fight. The line's strong enough in terms of the hook length. I'm maximising my perfect presentation in terms of that the hook can pivot in the bead, and the wafter's on a bayonet, which allows it to, basically the hook sits flat on the bottom, and with the flexibility of the bayonet in a loop, it allows the wafter to sit upright, a little bit like a pillar box, and allows maximum movement. So when a carp comes along, it moves naturally, does the wafter, and tricks the fish into taking it. Another bonus with fishing a slack line as well is that your feeder never moves. Once you've set the trap, once you've cast in, sunk your line carefully without moving the feeder, it's there, and you're never getting any tension on your line that's going to move the feeder. The only thing that can move the feeder is a fish. So we'll see how the session progresses. Right, another little tactic we can talk about as well in terms of the setup is how you position your rod, what rod rest you use, and your general setup for that. Now, being an old angler, I'm an old school angler, and the modern way, a lot of anglers, and there's no right or wrong way, a lot of anglers like to point the rod at a very shallow angle to where they're casting. But me personally, I like to have my rod at about 45 degrees, and for me the benefit is it allows me to fish the slack line that I've described. It allows you to read the tip, because as you get liners and signs of fish in your peg, you've got roughly a 90 degree or a 75 degree angle between the line and your rod tip, and any indications with that sort of angle are exaggerated more than when you're pointing the rod at a very shallow angle. So I like to do that. And another reason is when you get a violent bite, it allows the rod to bend, and you get less up pulls when you get a bite, less crack-offs, everything about it. It allows the rod to come into action as soon as you get a bite. You know, it bends like it should do with the test curve of the rod. It's really important when you position your rod rest to position it so that one of the butt rings on your rod is right up against the rod rest, and if you get a violent bite or you're not quite paying attention, there's minimal chance that the fish can pull your rod in. Next to no chance. But some days you get some exceptionally violent bites and you've got to have your wits about you. I had a little peck on the rod tip then. So in terms of the butt rest, just got an adjustable butt rest. You can use a gripper one. I like to use one that's provides a snug fit for the butt, but the most important bit is where the butt ring on your rod butts up to your front rest. That's important. And this method's safe. You know, you position it 90 degrees to your rod, and it's also, I'd also recommend that whatever rod rest you use one with a groove in it that allows the line to go through the groove. I'm not a fan of a rod rest that traps the line between the bottom of the rod rest and the rod blank. Again, it doesn't allow your line to move, and you just don't see as many indications on the tip. Right, I think we're time for a reed cast. One of the other things we'll talk about as well is casting technique, both in terms of distance and accuracy. Now, accuracy is probably the one that some anglers struggle with. And one tip that I would give you is when it comes to casting, no matter what rod you use, but especially with short rods, you generate a feel for how the rod bends and flexes when you swing your feeder out. Just swing it out gently and it puts a little bit of load and bend in the tip. And then you can swing it back, but the most important thing is when you swing it back in a straight line. So you look at where you want to cast to and you want to swing it back in a straight line so that it just goes over your shoulder. Some anglers pick the rod up and they swing it round in a little bit of an arc, and a lot of the time they don't realise they're doing it. So if you swing it round in an arc, when you make the cast, depending on the feeders moving round in an arc, so you're not accurate, because as you make the cast it can sometimes be just past your head or just before your head when it's behind you, so you don't keep your accuracy. But if you swing it back straight, looking dead at where you want to cast to, that's how you can get your accuracy. And it takes practice, and nobody's perfect at it, but with practice and using that technique, you should be able to improve your casting no end. It's gone a bit quiet in that deep water. We've had a few fish, but I feel as the day's going on and it's warming up and the sun's trying to break through, I think the fish are reluctant to be on the bottom. So I think next cast I'm going to try the short line, and when I say short I'm talking 4 to 5 metres. It'll literally be swing it out underarm and just plop it off the rod end. And with this style of fishing you definitely need your clutch set slack. There's no doubt about it. The fish are often big on the short line and the bites can be unbelievably savage. I would say medium to slack or soft, so that when you get a bite you want enough. You don't want it the clutch set too soft that they can pull line off dead easy, but you want it so that when you get a bite you're not going to pull the hook and it allows a carp to take the line. If you're fishing for skimmers or smaller fish or F1s, but F1s in particular can give the most violent bites, some days more violent than a carp. They have an habit, I think, of sucking the bait in, and they realise there's an hook in it and then they just set off at 100 miles an hour, and your bites can be really vicious. So even when I'm fishing short, load the feeder up in exactly the same way. So some pellets in the mould, half fill it, push them down gently, push your wafter into it, make sure your hook's not masked. Pellets on top, push them in, a few loose ones. Put my thumb at the bottom of the mould, fold the method over, push it in, quick release, perfect cherry every time. Give it a good squeeze. Now I'm only going to underarm this, but nevertheless I'm still going to give it a squeeze. And I'm literally just done that. I've not even swung it out, I've just let it swing off the end of the rod. Now I'm just adjusting the clutch so I got it, so I think it's just right. And just put it, again, you don't want no tension in it. It's probably even more important to have no tension in it when you're fishing really close. And we'll see if we get a bite here. It might be a bit early for this to work, but we'll see. My thinking today in terms of how the fish are reacting is that it's a very calm day. And like I say, this lake's very deep. I've not fished it before, but I've got a feeling they'll want to come up in the water. So you have to pick your tactics carefully on a method and either look to fish to an island or a far bank, basically in shallow water. Or if you've not got that, if you've just got open water in front of you, just fish it close, on the shelf or down the sides. Doesn't always work, but when it works it can be a fantastic. I've just had a great big liner there. Again, fishing a slack tip, it allows you to see it, but it was a big liner. So I'm confident at some stage it'll roar off this. Again, I'm just loose feeding a few 6mm over the top, just throwing them by hand. Try and keep it fairly tight. It's no different to fishing the short pole really. And some days it can be better than the short pole. And what I mean by that is if you fish big open water lakes that are prone to a lot of ripple and especially tow, some days you can struggle to present it with a pole because the tow's too much and it's just constantly, especially when the tow's going with the wind, it's pushing your float through all the time and you're fighting it. Whereas you just drop a method in, you get perfect presentation, the rod's in the rod rest, the trap's set, and it's a fantastic method at places like Larford, where the big fish, they fight hard, and some of the fish are so big that they can be a real handful to catch on the pole. Sometimes they just swim out into open water, and once they bottom your elastic out, they can break you, whereas on a rod, you can let them go as far as you want within reason. So I'm getting the odd sign, so that liner I've had just put a bit of bend and tension in the tip, so I'm just going to straighten it up again by backing the reel off. There we go, that's done it. Don't need to do a lot, it's literally just a little movement of the reel handle. And I'm encouraged by these signs we've had under the rod end, and it is literally under the rod end. It's no more than a top kitten one out. If I fished any closer, I'd be fishing before my rod tip. So one of the other things to bear in mind as well is how long you leave it in for. When you make a cast, I do use a stopwatch. I tend to use one less in the summer than I do in winter. In the summer I like to judge it more by a feel. There we go, that's a bite. Let's pick the rod up nice and gentle. I think this might be a skimmer. Clutch has been slackened off, so yeah, it is, it's a skimmer. It's not a bad one. In fact, some would call it a bream. I'd say that is a bream actually. It's not a bad one at all, that. Just play him nice and gently. There we go. He's a fish, nice one. I'd settle for a few more of him today. He's a beauty, he is. Salt won't mind him tomorrow at Southfield. Look at that one. He's a proper bream. He's £3 plus, maybe 3.5. Yeah, so there we go. I'm going to pop this one straight back because we're just catching a few carp for a catch shot. So I'm not going to put him in the net. I'm just going to put him straight back to swim off to encourage his mates to come and see us. Now, because I was fishing just under the rod end and I've not had to wind the feeder back far, you can see here that I've still got a little bit of bait left on the method feeder in the bars. Now, my thinking on this is that, and again, every angler's different, but I like my bait to wash off the feeder every time I cast it in the swim. And my thinking is that way I am building a swim, I'm putting bait in the swim. And okay, a little bit might get washed off as you wind it in. So sometimes, quite often when I wind in, even though I've pressed it on quite hard, the feeder's always clean, and that's because your bait gets washed off as you wind it in. Always remember to set your clutch every time you fish short, because the first time you don't, you'll know about it. Yeah, so sometimes your bait gets washed off when you're winding in. Some anglers like the bait to stick on the feeder, or certainly a large proportion of it, and that way they know that when they're fishing, when a fish comes into the swim, there's always bait near the feeder. There we go, I've got a bite straight away there, look. I'm not quite sure what this one is. It might be a big bream. It's not quite as big as the last one, but it's not a bad one. And in a match, I'd certainly be thinking about this. Oh, I don't know though. This is probably going to be half a Zolt's weight tomorrow. Yep, he's equally as big as the last one. Just pick him up gently. There we go. Yeah, he's all of £3 him. Nice bronze bream, brown one. Wafter in his mouth. Beautiful fish. Tail's a bit slim, but he's a beauty. Fancy one of them tomorrow, Zolt? Yeah. Half a dozen? Would you take that now? Right, so we're going to give this another go. We've had a few bites here, so getting signs. Maybe not quite, squeeze it quite as hard. So come back with a bit of feed on the feeder again there. And like I say, I like to bait to swim up. I think it's one of the key things that on some days when your swim can be quiet, but then after a few hours, a shoal of fish or some carp swim along, come into your swim, they see a pile of bait there. It's a bit like old school bream fishing, and as soon as you come to a pile of bait, hopefully, or the plan is, that they'll settle over it and feed. So I've just lowered it in off the rod end. Felt the feeder down just like you would with a bomb or any sort of feeder fishing that you do. Rod in the rod rest. Just wind the line so you get a little bit of tension and then back it off so you tip straight. We'll see if we get another. At some stage during the day, I imagine this is going to roar off with a carp. And I'm getting bites certainly more frequently now than I was in the deeper water, which tells me straight away that's where the fish want to be. And okay, they're only bream at the moment. I've had catches of £100 plus of bream at Larford doing what I'm demonstrating here. The feeder's just a little bit tangled around the fish. There we go. Like peas in a pod these so far, and somebody did say to me that there's some proper bream in this lake. So these are lovely fish. This one looks as though it's just got over a bit of spawning. It's got a few nodules on it. But when you get bites as quick as this, you can soon put a big weight together, and quite often on difficult days when the carp don't feed so well, these are the target fish. It's an in and out method, and today we're fishing in line according to fishery rules, but where I could, if I could use an elasticated feeder, I would do, only because it allows me to get in and out quicker. It's a bit of a, when you're getting plenty of bites off the rod end, it's a bit of a time and motion exercise, and the quicker you can get back fishing, the more you catch. So lower it in, watch it down, bail arm over, sack the clutch off, and we're away. Feed a few pellets, not as many as we were doing in the longer line, but just enough to encourage plenty of fish there. Not neglecting my longer line, so I'm still feeding in this longer line quite positively, because I want to encourage them onto the bottom. But like I say, it might be easier said than done today with this depth of water, and now the sun's quite warm and breaking through. But we're catching enough to make it interesting. It's not easy, but we've had, what, 3 or 4 bream in as many casts. There's very little wind today, there's just a slight ripple on the lake, off my shoulder. Really picturesque, this lake. It's a proper, it's a Mr. Crabtree type lake. I believe this is the oldest lake on the fishery. The others were dug, but I think this is more of a natural lake. More of a, I'd say, it's like a mini gravel pit. It's a deep lake. Again, I've just had a little sign on the tip, little rattle. So there might not be carp, but if they're them size bream, I'll take them all day long. And on a good day, when conditions are right, fishing under your rod end can be the best tactic, even on a method. When it's blowing a gale, when it's towing like mad, that's the time to be fishing the method and not a pole. And like all forms of fishing, a lot of it's to do with what the weather conditions are like on the day. You can't go with a set plan. You can have an idea of tactics that you think might work. So on a nice hot summer's sunny day, you might think, well, shallow water in the edges, feeder up against an island, targeting where you think the fish, what depth of water the fish will be in. And other days when it's dull, windy, overcast, low pressure, the fish tend to be on the bottom. But every day's different. And if we knew how they fed every single day, we'd all catch a lot more than we do. That sun's really breaking through now. What was a wet, dull morning, it was raining when we got here. It's turning out to be quite a nice day. But it is forecast to rain this afternoon, later on, so we'll see how it goes. Right, well, the weather's setting in. the rain's come back, and I think I'm going to call this the last one. It's been a day where we've had to be patient and wait and eke bites out, but they've been quality fish here at Lodge Farm on the top pool. Fantastic fishery. If you live nearby, I'd definitely recommend you get yourselves down here. And I'm going to try and net this fish before I get too wet now, because it's going to sling it down. Oh, and he's a beauty to finish on. Look at him. Chip panned him into the net. A fantastic day on the new ICS flatbed method medium feeder. Great day. Can't wait to come back to Lodge Farm. Just take the hook out of him and I'll see if he'll behave. Right, let me see. Every one of these fish in here is really feisty, so I need to try and be a bit careful with him. And he's still trying to beat me up in the net. But we'll see if he'll behave for us. If I can get hold of him. Zolt can get him in there.